What if every moment of your life was imagined before it ever happened? One man proved it. To some, he was a mystic. To others, a heretic. But to those who tested his words, impossible things began to happen. His name was Neville Goddard, and his story starts here. Barbados, start of the 19th century. Clothes were thin. Food was scarce. 10 children shared what little they had. Their father kept a small grocery, rice and salted fish, barely keeping them afloat. By day he raced barefoot through the sugarcane fields, free beneath the Caribbean sun. At night, he read scripture by candlelight, words that set his mind on fire. At 17, Barbados could no longer hold the size of his dreams. But what happened next? No one could have predicted. That year, Neville boarded the SS Vasari, chasing the bright promise of New York. But New York did not open its arms. He danced, auditioned, he fought for scraps of roles. At 18, he found love, or thought he did. Mildred Hughes, a name that felt like home. At 19, he cradled a son. A flicker of hope in a world growing darker. The next year, silence answered where laughter used to be. The marriage had crumbled. They went separate ways, the love gone, the bond broken. Yet on paper, Neville was still bound. New York law made divorce nearly impossible. The New York divorce laws had trapped him, bound on paper to a marriage already dead. The rolls stopped coming. The lights went out. In the silence that followed, came hunger. Desperate, Neville joined a touring performance group bound for England. At first it looked like failure, but the truth was far stranger. British halls were drafty, the seats half empty. Each night he spoke his lines into silence. One night, a Scotsman waited at the stage door. He said nothing on Neville's performance. Instead, he pressed a bundle of worn books into his hands. Books that claimed the mind itself was God, that imagination could bend reality. Neville laughed. Maybe you would too. But in his cold room, he read until dawn. And when the candle finally died, the dream of Broadway was gone. A new stage had risen. Infinite. Unseen. Eternal. Neville carried those books back to New York. They spoke of imagination shaping reality, but the answers were fragments, scattered. So he searched. Theosophy, Christian Science, yoga, occult circles. Each door opened, dazzled him for a moment and shut. At 26, marriage, money, and meaning had slipped away. He was restless, broke, searching. This next moment would test everything he believed. His name came as a whisper, a mystic in Harlem, a teacher unlike any other. Abdullah. A friend told Neville to go and watch Abdullah. The air was thick with smoke and whispers. At the front stood a tall man in a turban, presence radiating like fire contained. When the lecture ended, Neville approached. The man didn't greet him, didn't smile. He said, "Neville, you are 6 months late. I was told you'd be here half a year ago." Neville was stunned. He had never met this man before, yet somehow he knew something. From that moment, the lessons began. Abdullah spoke with no softness, no hesitation. You are God. Your imagination is God. Live as though your wish is fulfilled and the world must obey. Neville resisted. He argued. Each time he wavered, Abdullah slammed the door. The discipline was harsh, but it was preparing him for the test that would change everything. At age 28, in the depths of the Great Depression, Neville's longing to return home to Barbados grew unbearable. 12 years had passed since Neville saw his family. He longed for home in Barbados, but he had no money, no ticket. He told Abdullah his sorrow, of his longing to spend Christmas at home. Abdullah declared, "You are in Barbados, and you went first class." Neville laughed, but that night, in his tiny Harlem room, he closed his eyes. He remembered Abdullah's words, "Walk as though you are already there, smell the sea, hear the voices of your family, sleep tonight in Barbados." He pictured himself sailing the Atlantic to Barbados and became excited. But night after night he persisted. Nothing happened. Doubt swelled. He returned to Abdullah, seeking comfort. Abdullah slammed the door. "Hold the state, no matter what." And then, just when it seemed over, everything changed. On December 4th, a letter arrived. Inside, a ticket from his brother, 3rd class. Neville rushed to Abdullah, triumphant, but the mystic's only response was, "Who told you you were going 3rd class?" At the harbor, a cancellation was announced. A 1st-class cabin opened, Neville boarded, exactly as Abdullah had declared. And as the ship cut through the Atlantic, Neville understood. Imagination was not fantasy. It was law. Abdullah's door slam was not philosophy. It was law. Assume the end, and the world bends to it. Don't accept any other option. Slam the door on doubt. That Christmas in Barbados, Neville walked streets he had only dared to walk in imagination. Every laugh at the table, every tear in his mother's eyes, declared the same truth: Abdullah had been right. The impossible was now fact. Imagination creates reality, and when he sailed back to New York, he no longer chased the stage, he carried a secret. A student of the law of assumption, soon to become its prophet. For 5 years, Abdullah drilled the same truth into him. Assume it. Live in the end. Refuse the senses. Persist until it hardens into fact. At age 34, Neville stepped forward as a teacher. His first book, At Your Command, was no thick volume, 40 pages at most. But every line struck like prophecy.
God's name is, I am your awareness of being. Not one thing appears in this world unless you assume it first. You express and have only that which you are conscious of being or possessing. To attempt to change circumstances before you change your state of consciousness is to struggle against the very nature of things. It is not what you want that you attract. You attract what you believe yourself to be. When you hear that God said, "Let us make man in our image," you should know it means, "Let us become conscious of being man."
In Depression-era New York, that was heresy. Churches preached surrender. Neville preached creation. Controversial, dangerous. But Neville had found his voice, and he would not soften it. After At Your Command was published, people began to test his words. One student longed for an apartment already occupied. Impossible, everyone said. At first, nothing changed. But then, each night he imagined himself inside his furniture placed, sunlight pouring through those windows. Then, without warning, the tenants moved. The lease was his.
Dwell in the end. Live there in imagination, and reality will follow.
His own life continued to mirror the law. When he met Catherine Van Schumas, he knew she was meant to be his wife. But there was a problem. On paper, he was still married. And in New York, divorce was almost impossible. The law was iron, the door was locked. But Neville had learned how to slam doors of his own. Neville had learned another kind of law, SATS, the state akin to sleep. In that drowsy borderland between waking and dreaming, imagination slips past doubt and plants itself as fact. For 1 week, each night, he went to bed assuming the end that he and Catherine were already married.
The moment before sleep is the most important. Enter it as though your wish were already realized.
He felt the weight of a ring on his finger. He heard Catherine's voice in their home. He slept, not as a man waiting, but as a husband. And then the world bent. A call came. "Mr. Goddard, your wife has been arrested." Neville had not seen Mildred in years. In court, Neville asked the judge to go easy on her. The judge agreed and let her go without punishment. Outside, she turned to him and said, "Here's your divorce papers, all signed." At age 37, he was now free to marry Catherine, and that same year their daughter Victoria was born. Even love itself bowed to the law of assumption. Neville would later say,
I slept as though we were married. Night after night I assumed I was happily married to the girl I love until it became fact.
But the world was at war, and soon, the law Neville had tested in love would be tested again against something far greater. At 38, Neville was drafted. Camp Polk, Louisiana. Heat, drills, uncertainty. What he discovered would turn his entire world upside down. Back home, his wife and newborn waited in New York. But it wasn't just family pulling at him. Deep down, he felt a greater duty not to fight a war, but to spread the law Abdullah had drilled into him, to save lives in another way. He applied for release. The answer came back fast. Disapproved. But Neville remembered. Live in the end. Assume the wish fulfilled. Each night he entered the state akin to sleep and walked his Washington Square apartment in imagination. He touched the furniture, heard his daughter in her crib, felt Catherine beside him, until it was real. Days later, the Army reversed its decision. His discharge was approved on medical grounds. Neville Goddard left honorably. Not as a deserter, but as a man called to his true work, to teach the law. Think about that. In the middle of war, when every man was needed, imagination sent him home. Neville would later say,
"The pen scratched out disapproved and wrote, approved. A voice said, that which I have done. Do nothing."
And Neville was not alone. Across New York, his students tested the law, and impossible things began to happen. A young woman came to Neville in desperation. She had just secured a new job, her chance to start fresh. But there was one problem. She had nothing suitable to wear. She needed a proper dress to even begin. Neville told her, "Don't beg for it, assume it. See yourself already clothed as you wish to be." She went to sleep, smiling about the compliments she received that day wearing her new dress, of how the fabric felt on her skin. Within days, the dress appeared gifted by a friend who said, "I thought of you the moment I saw it. The exact size, the exact style."
You do not need money. You need only assumption. Persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the world will find the means.
From that moment on, Neville's path was set to spread the law of assumption. Through the mid-20th century, he filled halls across New York and Los Angeles, teaching the law with a new authority because he had lived it. People came with broken hearts, with empty pockets, with dreams too big to confess, and he delivered. The crowd soon thought they knew his message. But this is where the story takes a shocking turn. One woman faced ruin, no rent, no food, children hungry. She would walk and find pennies on the floor, but she remembered his words. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist. At first, nothing. But then, as Neville himself told her story,
"A lady in this city won the lottery. She had no money, but she imagined herself holding the ticket, hearing the announcement that she had won. She persisted, and she did win."
To her it wasn't chance, it was rescue. Imagination had given her back her life. By age 54, Neville's work took a turn no one expected. His nights filled with visions of birth inside his skull, a child placed in his arms, David calling him father. What followed still leaves scholars speechless today.
The promise erupted in me, and over a period of 3.5 years the entire story of Jesus Christ unfolded within me. I tell it now, but in the beginning I kept it quiet, for who would believe it?
The Bible, he realized, was never history. Abraham, Moses, Jesus, not men of the past, but eternal states of consciousness.
The Bible is the story of your own wonderful human imagination. When it unfolds in you, you will know that you are He.
And when Neville finally declared this openly, the room split. Some stormed out, others wept. He did not soften.
I tell you, you are Jesus Christ, and your imagination is God. When you say, I am, you are declaring the name of God. There is no other. God became you, that you may awaken as Him.
The promise means the Bible is not history, but your own story. One day it awakens in you, you feel a birth from within. You meet David who calls you Father. You realize God became you. It's grace, not effort. The end of the journey is to discover your true self as Christ, and your imagination as the power of God. From that day on, Neville's voice was different. He no longer taught men how to get checks in the mail. He told them the only true destiny was to awaken as God. He knew many could not accept it, but he had seen it, lived it, and nothing could make him turn back. He told them they were creators of worlds, gods clothed in human form, asleep to their own power. Today, science itself is catching up to what Neville taught. The CIA's own Gateway project studied altered states and concluded that consciousness can bend reality. Quantum physics now admits the observer shapes the outcome. By the age of 65, Neville's body was frail, but his message was unshakable. He told his listeners plainly,
If I drop dead right now, I have fulfilled the promise.
In October 1972, Neville's decided to leave us. But his words, his fire, still burn. Think of it. A barefoot boy from Barbados, daring to stand against the world and say, "You are God." He gave everything to show us that we are more than we believe. He carried ridicule, he carried rejection, and still, he never stopped declaring, "You are God." Tonight, we honor him. We give thanks for his courage, his vision, his gift. If his words have touched you, write, "Thank you, Neville," or a personal message in the comments, not as ritual, but as remembrance. Let his name echo forward, because men like Neville Goddard do not die. They live on in the lives they change, in the hearts they awaken, in the worlds we dare to create because of them. This film is an unofficial tribute created from public lectures, writings, and historical accounts to help share the life and teachings of one of the greatest mystics of our time. Thank you, Neville Lancelot Goddard, for showing us the power within ourselves.